1. Kurt Warner and Torry Holt, Rams. They didn't just play football, they rewired the NFL offense. From 1999 through 2003, quarterback Kurt Warner and wide receiver Torry Holt turned the St. Louis Rams into the league's most explosive scoring machine. The greatest show on turf. Every Sunday, defenses across the NFL were shredded by perfect timing and surgical precision. Warner's dropback was lightning fast. Classic pocket quarterback mechanics sharpened to milliseconds. His release rewrote how modern NFL passing attacks were run. And on the other end was Holt, a route-running technician who turned cover 2 shells and man-press corners into scenery. In the 2003 NFL season, Holt dominated every statistical category. 117 receptions, 1,696 yards, 12 touchdowns. He led all NFL wideouts while facing double coverage every week. Defensive coordinators built entire game plans around him. None of them worked. Warner's timing, Holt's separation. The connection was pure execution. No gimmicks, no trick plays, just mastery of space and rhythm. But injuries dismantled the Rams dynasty. When Warner's throwing hand and ribs failed him, the entire offensive identity collapsed. By 2004, the greatest show on turf was history. Holt never slowed down. From 2004 to 2007, he still posted 1,300 and 1,400 yard seasons. Consistent, elite, overlooked. He was doing Hall of Fame level work long after the spotlight moved on. Warner would later resurface with the Arizona Cardinals, guiding another Super Bowl run with Larry Fitzgerald. Holt's brilliance stayed in the box score, buried under time. Together, they modernized the NFL passing game. Quick release quarterback play, precision routes, and tempo that every offense now imitates. They didn't just dominate a season, they changed how football was played. And if that felt unstoppable, stay until the bonus segment at the end. 2 Oakland Raiders legends who turned the deep ball into fear itself and whose names the league somehow forgot. 2. Daunte Culpepper and Randy Moss, Vikings. They weren't a connection, they were an explosion. In the 2004 NFL season, the Minnesota Vikings fielded one of the most destructive quarterback-receiver duos the league had ever seen. Quarterback Daunte Culpepper stood 6'4", 265 pounds, part power back, part pocket assassin. Across from him, wide receiver Randy Moss, the purest deep threat in football history, waited to detonate every defense that dared to play single coverage. That year was football violence disguised as efficiency. Culpepper threw for 4,717 yards and 39 touchdowns, finishing second in NFL MVP voting. Moss, even while nursing injuries, still scored 13 touchdowns, most of them on plays that looked unfair. Defensive backs didn't lose to them, they drowned. Every snap was the same nightmare. Play action, 7-step drop, and the ball launched half a field before the camera could follow it. Moss didn't run routes, he bent coverage rules. Culpepper didn't just throw deep, he weaponized gravity. Together they turned the Metrodome into an air raid siren. And then, like every great NFL story, it broke overnight. In 2005, Culpepper shredded his knee. 3 ligaments gone, career altered in a single collapse. The Vikings traded Moss that same offseason, shipping the most dangerous weapon in football to the Raiders. In 1 year, the NFL's most explosive passing attack was gone. Without Moss, Culpepper's numbers vanished. Without Culpepper, Moss looked stranded. Until New England. 2 seasons later, he resurrected himself with Tom Brady and rewrote the record book. Culpepper never got back. His cannon arm had lost its fuse. What they built in Minnesota was more than stats. It was blueprint. The modern deep ball offenses that followed all echo what Culpepper and Moss created. Power quarterback, vertical terror, defenses forced to choose how they die. For one NFL season, they were untouchable. For 1 year, every Sunday highlight started in Minneapolis and ended in the end zone. They didn't fade, they detonated, and the league's never been the same, but dominance always passes the torch. Up next, the Oakland Raiders of the 1970s, where Ken Stabler and Fred Biletnikoff turned swagger into silver and black precision, and later the bonus Raiders duo that mastered the deep ball and vanished into history. 3. Ken Stabler and Fred Biletnikoff, Raiders. Before the highlight tapes, before analytics, the Oakland Raiders played football like it was a fistfight. Sharp, mean, and precise. At the center of it all stood quarterback Ken Stabler and wide receiver Fred Biletnikoff. Two men who didn't just read defenses, they toyed with them. This was the 1976 NFL season when the Raiders finally conquered the league. Stabler wasn't built for beauty. He was built for control. He called his own plays, read blitzes mid-snap, and threw with a kind of reckless accuracy that only worked because Biletnikoff always knew where the ball would land. Biletnikoff wasn't the fastest or flashiest, but his route running was brutal, short, sharp, deliberate. He used footwork the way other receivers use speed. He didn't burn defenders, he dissected them. That year, Stabler threw 27 touchdowns, and Biletnikoff caught everything that mattered, earning Super Bowl 11 MVP. Their timing was unbreakable. Out routes, crossers, seam shots between linebackers. In an era defined by violence, they built their empire on intelligence and trust. Every connection between them looked rehearsed 1,000 times. Because it was. But time comes for every dynasty, even one wearing silver and black. By the late 70s, Biletnikoff's legs slowed. Stabler's throws lost that late game bite. The Raiders' offense evolved. New names, new weapons, a faster vertical style that left their precision buried beneath highlight reels. Still, the DNA of modern passing starts with them. They proved that timing could win championships, that precision could outlast brute force. When the Raiders lifted the Lombardi Trophy in January 1977, it wasn't just victory, it was validation that discipline could dominate chaos. They didn't need to shout their greatness, they just lined up, read the defense, and took exactly what they wanted. But if that was control, the next story is chaos. The Jaguars of the late 90s, Mark Brunell and Jimmy Smith, two underdogs who built a contender from scratch, only to watch the window slam shut. And don't forget, that bonus Raiders duo at the end, they'll remind you why the deep ball was once the most feared weapon in football. 4. Mark Brunell and Jimmy Smith, Jaguars. They weren't supposed to be legends. They were supposed to be placeholders, a cast-off quarterback and a receiver who'd already been cut twice. Instead, they built one of the most efficient and fearless offenses the NFL had ever seen. When the Jacksonville Jaguars entered the league in the mid-1990s, they were expansion noise. New colors, no culture. Then quarterback Mark Brunell arrived from Green Bay, and wide receiver Jimmy Smith clawed his way onto the roster. What came next turned a young franchise into a threat. Brunell wasn't flashy. He was calm, controlled, and deadly on the move. Left-handed, mobile, accurate. A blueprint for the modern dual-threat passer. And Jimmy Smith, he became his compass. Every scramble, every broken play, Smith found the open window and made it count. By the 1999 NFL season, they were unstoppable. Smith hauled in 116 receptions for 1,636 yards, one of the best receiving seasons of that decade. Brunell threw darts through tight coverage, reading defenses with surgical patience. Their chemistry was unspoken. No looks, no signals, just trust. The Jaguars finished 14-2, the best record in football. For a moment, they looked destined to take over the AFC. Then the window slammed shut. They lost to the Tennessee Titans 3 times that season, including the AFC Championship game. That defeat broke something that stats couldn't measure. Jacksonville never recovered. Within a few years, the roster unraveled. Cap space vanished. Injuries mounted. Brunell was traded away. Smith kept producing, but the spotlight dimmed. He retired with over 12,000 receiving yards, more than most Hall of Famers, but no one talks about him. Brunell became a journeyman, remembered more for mentoring backups than for leading one of the most efficient passing attacks of the late 1990s. Together, they turned an expansion franchise into a powerhouse built on rhythm, trust, and precision. They didn't have the flash of Moss and Culpepper or the legacy of Warner and Holt, but on pure execution, for one stretch in NFL history, they were just as dangerous. They weren't loud, they weren't famous, they were simply great. And then they were gone. And if you think quiet dominance dies slowly, the next story proves otherwise. Because when Carson Palmer and Chad Ochocinco took over Cincinnati, they turned swagger into electricity. And in one hit, it all disappeared. Stay locked in, and don't miss that Raiders bonus duo waiting at the end. Fef Sing Carson Palmer and Chad Johnson. Ochocinco, Bengals. In the early 2000s, the Cincinnati Bengals were a punchline. Decades of losing, empty seats, no direction. Then in 2004, two men changed everything. Quarterback Carson Palmer and wide receiver Chad Johnson, soon to be known as Ochocinco. Together, they didn't just revive a franchise, they rebranded it. Palmer was calm chaos, a classic pocket passer with elite accuracy and deep ball touch. Ochocinco was pure voltage, speed, footwork, and and ego wrapped into a highlight reel. When they connected, it looked easy. In the 2005 NFL season, Palmer threw for over 3,800 yards and 32 touchdowns. Johnson caught 97 passes for 1,432 yards and 9 touchdowns. Those numbers didn't just lift the Bengals, they announced them. For the first time in years, the AFC had to respect Cincinnati's offense. Their chemistry was lethal. Timing routes, back shoulder throws, deep crossers that tore through coverages. Defenses couldn't press Ochocinco. He'd embarrass you on national TV. He wasn't just playing football, he was performing dominance, and Palmer had the arm to make it all real. Then came the collapse. AFC wildcard game, 2005, first drive. Palmer drops back, fires a perfect strike to Chris Henry. 66 yards. The crowd erupts, then silence. A low hit tears through Palmer's left knee. ACL and MCL destroyed. The Bengals' rise ended on that play. Everything changed after that. Palmer never fully recovered his movement or confidence. Ochocinco's brilliance turned erratic. Highlight catches mixed with sideline outbursts. What was once chemistry turned into tension. The swagger that made them dangerous became the thing that tore them apart. From 2005 to 2007, they kept chasing that magic. It never came back. Cincinnati fell into mediocrity, trapped between what they were and what they should have been. Palmer eventually forced a trade. Ochocinco drifted between teams, his legend fading under his own spotlight. For 2 seasons, they were the most entertaining show in the NFL. A mix of precision and personality no defense could contain. They made the Bengals matter again, but the price of that spark was everything. Legacy, health, and momentum. The league moved on, they became a memory. A what-if whispered between fans who remember how close they came. And if that collapse felt brutal, the next story cuts even deeper. Because when Donovan McNabb and Terrell Owens took the field in Philadelphia, they weren't trying to win a division, they were trying to build a dynasty. And ego tore it to pieces. And remember, that Raiders bonus duo still waits at the end. 6 Donovan McNabb and Terrell Owens, Eagles. In the early 2000s, the Philadelphia Eagles were built to win. Stacked defense, elite coaching, and a franchise quarterback ready to take the next step. All they needed was a weapon who could break the game open. In 2004, they got him. Quarterback Donovan McNabb finally had his superstar, wide receiver Terrell Owens. It was instant combustion. McNabb's arm strength and mobility had always carried the Eagles just short of greatness. 3 straight NFC championship losses. Owens was the spark that turned almost into unstoppable. Explosive off the line, brutal after the catch, unstoppable in space. Every route was a threat to go the distance. The 2004 NFL season became a clinic in domination. Owens put up 77 receptions, 1,200 yards, and 14 touchdowns in just 14 games. McNabb threw 31 touchdowns with only 8 interceptions. The offense exploded to life, built on rhythm, trust, and pure aggression. Defenses didn't know who to double. If you rolled coverage to Owens, McNabb burned you with speed and precision elsewhere. The Eagles were no longer the NFC's best team. They were the NFL's headline act. Then came the Super Bowl. Against Tom Brady's New England Patriots, Owens played hurt. A broken leg, a metal plate in his ankle, and still torched the defense for 122 yards. It should have been legendary. It should have sealed their place in NFL history. Instead, it tore them apart. Behind the scenes, ego was detonating the locker room. Owens wanted credit. He believed he was the team. McNabb wanted order. He believed leadership came first. It became war between quarterback and receiver. Sideline tension turned into public chaos. Within months, the NFL's best offensive pairing was gone. Owens was suspended, released, and blacklisted from Philadelphia. McNabb stayed, but the soul of that offense was gone. He'd never have another season like 2004. Neither would the Eagles. The dynasty window slammed shut, not from injury, not from age, but from pride. And here's the brutal truth. When they were united, they were everything a passing attack should be. Physical, electric, fearless. When they divided, they proved that talent alone can't hold a team together. McNabb and Owens weren't just an NFL duo, they were a cautionary tale. Proof that chemistry wins games, but ego decides championships. And if you think that collapse was dramatic, the next one is colder. Because in Dallas, Tony Romo and Dez Bryant didn't implode from ego. They fell because time and pain caught up before glory ever could. And don't go anywhere. That Raiders bonus duo at the end still waits, buried beneath silver and black. 7. Tony Romo and Dez Bryant, Cowboys. In the modern era, few duos captured Dallas Cowboys football quite like quarterback Tony Romo and wide receiver Dez Bryant. They weren't just productive, they were magnetic. Every highlight felt personal, like watching belief meet violence. From 2012 to 2014, they were unstoppable. Bryant averaged 91 catches, 1,312 yards, and 13 touchdowns a season. Romo threw with rhythm and precision few quarterbacks have ever matched. Back shoulder fades, tight window strikes, 50-50 balls that felt more like 90-10. It was poetry written in collisions. Romo trusted Dez like no other receiver he'd ever had. When protection broke down, when the play dissolved, he just looked for number 88, and the ball found its home. Bryant's body control was absurd. His strength at the catch point made elite corners look undersized. They turned desperation throws into art, and for a moment, Cowboys fans believed the drought was over. But the NFL is cruel to dreamers. In 2015, Romo's back, already battered by years of punishment, finally gave out. A broken collarbone, nerve damage, chronic pain. The quarterback who'd built a connection on precision couldn't even stay upright. Without him, Bryant's production fell off a cliff. His explosiveness dimmed, his separation vanished, and the window for Dallas closed overnight. By 2016, Dak Prescott had arrived. Romo watched from the sideline. Suited, silent, finished. Bryant never regained his dominance. He became a name, not a nightmare. The duo that was supposed to bring another Lombardi trophy to Dallas ended with a whisper instead of a roar. They were everything the Cowboys brand promised. Flair, talent, heartbreak. When they were right, the stadium shook. When they fell, the silence was louder than any cheer. Their story is what defines this franchise. Brilliance crushed by timing, not ego, not failure. Just the clock running out before the legacy was sealed. And if that ending feels harsh, the next one hits harder. Because in Atlanta, Matt Ryan and Julio Jones didn't just lose. They watched the Super Bowl slip through their hands. The fall from MVP to memory. Up next. And remember, that Raiders bonus duo still waits at the end. The one that taught the league what deep threat really meant. 8. Matt Ryan and Julio Jones, Falcons. For a moment, it looked like the Atlanta Falcons had built perfection. A quarterback at his peak, a wide receiver who felt unstoppable, and an offense that rewrote the playbook. In 2016, Matt Ryan and Julio Jones turned efficiency into art, and then watched it die on the biggest stage the NFL could offer. Ryan was the definition of balance, accurate, calm, surgical in the pocket. He didn't have the flash of Mahomes or the chaos of Favre. He had control, and Julio Jones was his storm. At 6'3", 220 pounds, he played like a cheat code. A receiver too big for corners, too fast for safeties, too refined for mistakes. Together, they built the league's most terrifying offense. Ryan threw 38 touchdowns and over 4,900 yards, winning NFL MVP. Julio posted 1,409 yards, commanding double teams that never mattered. They didn't just move the chains, they moved fear. Defenses tried everything. Bracket coverage, zones, press. Nothing worked. The Falcons were inevitable. Then came Super Bowl LI, a 28-3 lead over Tom Brady's New England Patriots. Total dominance. And then the collapse. Missed bullocks, missed reads, missed destiny. 25 unanswered points later, the confetti fell for the other team. Atlanta's dream season turned into an eternal meme. They never recovered. Ryan was still productive, still precise, but the light was gone. Julio kept posting 1,300 yard seasons, but the spark that made them dangerous vanished. By the late 2010s, injuries chipped away at Julio's explosiveness. Ryan grew older, slower, carrying a franchise that had already given up. By the time both men left Atlanta, their masterpiece had faded into trivia. One MVP, one record-breaking offense, no rings. A legacy defined by a number, 28-3, instead of the brilliance that built it. They didn't lose because they weren't good enough. They lost because football is merciless. Because in this league, greatness doesn't guarantee survival. Ryan and Julio weren't just a duo. They were the proof that even perfection can crumble. And if that collapse defines pain, the bonus story at the end defines legacy. Because the Raiders' forgotten duo, Jim Plunkett and Cliff Branch, didn't just stretch the field, they redefined the deep ball. It's the story that inspired every vertical threat that came after, and it's next. 9. Jim Plunkett and Cliff Branch, Raiders. Some duos win games. This one changed what deep ball football looked like. In the early 1980s, the Oakland Raiders had a quarterback who was never supposed to be here, Jim Plunkett. a Heisman winner turned cast-off, beaten down by injuries, written off by 2 franchises, and beside him stood Cliff Branch, the most dangerous speed threat of his era, a blur in silver and black who turned vertical routes into terror. When they connected, it was violence through the air. Branch would explode off the line, no hesitation, no fear, and Plunkett would launch the football like it was destiny trying to catch up. In the 1980 NFL season, it all clicked. Plunkett threw 18 touchdowns in 11 starts, guiding the Raiders from wildcard afterthought to Super Bowl 15 champions. Branch caught 44 passes for 858 yards and 7 touchdowns, including one in that Super Bowl, a deep shot that ripped through the heart of Philadelphia's defense. That play defined what the Raiders were: fearless, explosive, unapologetic, but behind that swagger was something deeper. Every commercial, every feature on Jim Plunkett showed what he carried with him: to blind parents, working class roots, a lifetime of people underestimating him. He'd guide his mother's hands to the television when the Raiders played, telling her when the crowd roared, "That was us." Every throw, every touchdown to Branch meant more than points. It was proof that someone the league had discarded could still win it all. Branch was his perfect partner. His speed wasn't just athletic, it was strategic. He forced defenses to open the field, made safeties backpedal before the snap, and gave Plunkett the confidence to take every shot that others feared. Their chemistry was the foundation of the Raiders' vertical identity. Just win, baby football, built on trust and explosion. Together, they turned a broken quarterback and a relentless deep threat into champions. And when the confetti fell in New Orleans, it wasn't just redemption, it was resurrection. But time, as always, took its toll. By the mid-1980s, Branch's legs slowed and Plunkett's arm couldn't take the punishment. The Raiders shifted quarterbacks, shifted eras, and the deep ball dynasty that defined them faded into history. Still, their story never left the game. Every vertical route, every quarterback who takes that fearless deep shot, they're chasing what Plunkett and Branch built, a connection forged in pain, persistence, and pride. Because football isn't about perfection, it's about endurance. And few endured more than Jim Plunkett, throwing to a blur named Cliff Branch, carrying not just a franchise, but a promise. That greatness can come from anywhere, and that sometimes the most unstoppable duos are the ones the world stopped believing in first. If you want more stories of NFL greatness and heart, hit subscribe, drop a like, and stick around. The next chapter of football history is already waiting.